currently taking place in Tanzania is preliminary talks meant to pave the way for more comprehensive negotiations in the very near future. The focus in the current talks right now is building confidence and establishing a strong foundation for the future talks to occur. So as things stand right now, we're still at a very early stage. It is difficult to really predict an outcome.
That being the case, what is, I guess, something that would be applauded by people and something that will be latched onto, that people will want to hold on to, is the fact that you're willing to talk at all, because this is a government who up until even the beginning of this month had elicited protests in Oromia against the government of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. So that in itself is a step in the right direction, isn't it?
Right. For us, the very fact that the regime has accepted calls for negotiation is a positive step. We have been calling for peaceful resolution, calling for peaceful talks throughout the last 2 years, and that has consistently fallen on deaf ears. Seeing the regime recognize that there's no military solution to this conflict and a regime cannot rule while setting the people's demands aside is a positive step. It is something that the prospect for peaceful resolution exists should be reason to celebrate itself. It has been a 5-year conflict, very devastating to the Oromo people, to the Oromia itself. And seeing this kind of engagement is definitely a big step forward.
And you say it's a 5-year conflict. Some may be thinking also of the conflict which just ended in Tigray with the agreement in November that led to the cessation and eventual peace deal. And yet you took part in that 2-year war. You were also supporting the Tigrayan forces. So there are some who may say, well, why should they believe that you moving for negotiations when you're also fighting against Ethiopian forces?
I mean, we have been very clear and very consistent on our position when it comes to peaceful negotiations. Even very early on in 2019, we set out a 10-point proposal crafting how we can come out of the quagmire that the country found itself in, how through peaceful resolution we can calm the situation down, bring all the stakeholders together. We were proposing these kinds of things very early on, and like I said before, they fell on deaf ears. It is the regime that has kind of shifted gears now and begun pursuing a peaceful resolution as we've been demanding before.
So what happens? What are you putting on the negotiating table? Because there are many outside of Ethiopia who perhaps are rather confused and don't understand what the conflict has been about and what your protests have been about. What is it that you in Oromia have felt that the government, the central government, has not done and should be doing for your people?
Well, the very hard fact is the political space in Oromia and beyond throughout the rest of the country is closed. Currently in Oromia, if you go to the various cities, all of the opposition party offices are closed, completely empty, shut down by security forces, and it's been the case since back in 2019. Furthermore, many of the opposition party leaders are currently in prison. Recently, the leaders of the Oromo Liberation Front, which is a legally registered political party, disappeared after being imprisoned in Burayu jail for the last over 2 years, completely disappeared, and their families are looking for them. This is the kind of situation the opposition, any opposition to Abiy, legal opposition to Abiy is facing. So when people face these kind of odds, especially when you consider the Oromia situation, in 2018, with the rise of Abiy, Oromia had just come out of 4 years of protests where thousands of young protesters were out on the streets agitating for democratic change in the country. In 2018, we thought that's what we would finally get, but rather what happened was a faction of the old ruling regime, the EPRDF, co-opted, sabotaged, and used the Oromo protests to grab power itself. And at that time, it was given the mandate to lead the country, to transition the country into a democratic society. But rather what happened was that faction, led by Abiy Ahmed, prioritized preserving their own power over leading the transition. And so that has created all of these issues that we're seeing right now, all of these issues in Amhara, in Tigray, and Oromia, is rooted in this misplaced priority that the current ruling regime has.